I hate those things. Well, I do want to send out a very heartfelt thank you to everybody that helped us with the local city council elections. In mine, I'm not familiar with all of them, but at least in mine, my opponent had 100 campaign workers compared to my 4. She was out fundraising me 6 to 1. She had out-of-state help. She had special interest groups, the conservation voters, Montana Pride, and Forward Montana, all working for her. She had a professional campaign manager. So unfortunately, at least in my view, these city council elections have been taken from what I term to be a local event to an out-of-state special interest event. And we can reverse that trend, but we need to get ourselves organized in the next 2 years so that we can counter what they plan on doing. I'm sure what's going to go on downtown in the next 2 years, starting January, is going to get quite a few people's attention. The mayor's now got a super majority, and it's going to take us decades to reverse what they're going to get done in 2 years. So anyway, everything will be on the consent agenda. The meetings will be fast. On agenda 21, the terminology that you need, that I'm going to throw out here, if you've been paying attention, it will be very familiar to you. Equity, consensus, affordable housing, friends of, quality of life, social justice, traffic calming, invasive species, public-private partnerships, stakeholder, school to work. So these are all the terminology that come out of this Agenda 21. And before I get too much into this, how many of you saw Mr. DeWeese's speech and are familiar with Agenda 21? Okay. Since there aren't a whole lot, we'll just do a quick run through. Agenda 21 came out of the UN. It goes to the new global order. Probably the most telling thing, and I'll pass this around, is the Agenda 21 map. The red areas are core reserve and corridors. Limits little to no human use. See Montana up here? We're all red and yellow. The yellow signifies buffer zones, highly regulated use. So, basically our city government is embracing Agenda 21. The mayor has admitted on the record that he belongs to, and you can find all this stuff out on the internet. There are just plethoras of information on this. There's the mayor's climate protection agreement, which our mayor has signed on to. It started way back with chemists. And the basic thing of this agreement that our mayor signed: strive to meet or beat the Kyoto Protocol. So Agenda 21 is involved in the Kyoto Protocol that our Congress refused to sign on to. Targets in their own communities through, sorry, I don't have my glasses, actions ranging from anti-sprawl, land use policies, to urban forest restoration projects. We have 2 urban foresters in Missoula, just by the way. Urge the state government and federal government to enact policies and programs to meet or beat the greenhouse gas emission regulation targets. We have a greenhouse gas committee very active in this town. They've cost you a bunch of money already, doing their little greenie projects, like putting $14,000. Oh, I've got them in my purse. I'm just going to fudge it for right now. No, even holding it there won't work, but thank you. So, you know, last year, the majority on city council voted to spend $14,000 on an $8,000 Prius to make it more electric. So those are the type green projects that our city council is voting in. Urge the U.S. Congress to pass the bipartisan greenhouse gas reduction legislation, which would establish a national emission trading system. Those are your carbon credits. which are totally farce. So how did things get started in Missoula? The first thing this administration did was hire a gentleman by the name of Roger Millar. He was the director of our Office of Planning and Grants. Roger was so intent on getting this agenda passed. At one meeting that he held, he both verbally and physically intimidated a private citizen that was voicing opposition to this plan. He did not want it in the public record. This person was also threatened that if they ever showed up at another public meeting, he would throw them out. So this was a very concerted plan. It started with what we, if you remember, Envision Missoula. This is where they brought together the public and they wanted to know how we wanted the city developed. Well, one of the strategies that they use is called the Delphi process. And what the Delphi process is they assign people of opposition to tables so that they can squelch their opinions, so that they never get into the public record. I attended them, Dick attended them, Jane Rechtenwald attended these meetings. We were all separated out, put at tables with people that had the opinions they wanted in the public record. So basically what they were doing was going about creating the documentation they needed for the foregone conclusions of how they wanted this thing to come out. I also found it very coincidental that the one meeting that they set up for our business community, somehow there was a computer, we'll call it an anomaly, and all that data was lost. So the business community really didn't get a weigh in on this Envision plan. I had one of the engineers at the city tell me after he went through his session, he said, I really had to watch myself. I found myself voting yes for things that I was adamantly opposed to just because of the way that they timed your answers and the way that they worded the questions. You didn't have enough time to see the double speak in there, so when you voted no, you were actually voting yes. Again, creating the data that they needed to support their foregone conclusions. Then, after the Envision, what they came out with was this. The Urban Fringe Development Area Plan, or UFTA, as they call it. And they've got several scenarios. Of course, they went with the one where we all want our city densified, because that is part of Agenda 21. You crowd the people together. I'll pass this around, and here's the update if you want to look at that.
What year was this?
Let's see, what year was that, Patty? 2008.
Well, this one says update 2011.
Yeah, so they update it every year. But basically they just, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with just part of Ward 4, which is the South Hills, and then a little bit of the Lewis and Clark neighborhood flat, the Bellevue area, kind of over to Paxson. In that area, this UFTA plan calls for an additional 2,154 housing units. And just to really put the pin in you, they want what they call accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. Before Roger came to town, we called them PNCs, Planned Neighborhood Clusters, and they are clusters. Those, if you put, and those are 800 square foot houses that you can put in your backyard. They want those by right in every neighborhood in this city. We were successful when we negotiated Title 20, that I'll get to later, to keep them out of the single family zoned neighborhoods. But I can tell you that isn't going to stand for very long. But more important, with these ADUs, when you put those houses in your backyard, they are now counting those towards the density. So if you put 4 people in that house as a rental, those 4 people don't count to the population density of the neighborhood. The other thing that we researched when we were going through Title 20 was McCall, Idaho. That's where Roger was before he lit here. When you look at McCall, Idaho, he did all of these policies there. Their farmland now has the street gutters, curbs, sewers. There are no houses on that. They cannot convert it back to farmland. They've got whole housing developments that are now blighted because no one's ever lived in those houses. The old build it and they will come strategy that he was trying to use here. He said that we had 2% growth. We would have 2% growth, so we had 15,000 households coming here, so we had to build for it in anticipation of that. Well, the thing that they never told you is that 2% growth, yes, we were having it if you look basic, but that was because we were annexing like crazy. It wasn't new people coming to town, it was all the areas we were annexing. So we were not having 2% growth, it was more like 0.02% growth. So the zoning part of Agenda 21 is what they call smart growth. And I attended, I think Jane was there too, a seminar last January where a gentleman by the name of Randall O'Toole has done a lot of study on this. And it was very interesting because the way smart growth came, and they're very good at this, it was just a term that they came up with because who could argue with smart growth? I mean, if you're against smart growth, well, then you're for dumb growth. That's not logical. So it's just terminology. But what the premise of smart growth is sprawl. They believe it will stop sprawl. If you densify the cities, it's going to stop sprawl. With my day job, I have traveled all over this country, and when I go to communities that have dying downtowns, you have huge transportation corridors coming in and out of those cities. Their old established neighborhoods are blighted. You've got crack houses, you've got cars parking on the lawn, all the stuff that we're starting to see. Those communities have embraced smart growth. Smart growth actually exacerbates sprawl because people move out. So it has the exact opposite effect of what they say, but they're willing to continue with this theory because their premise is, well, the theory's not flawed, it's the people implementing it that are flawed. So, and some of the other terminology that you hear with smart growth is mixed-use development. We just heard that one a couple weeks ago when they wanted to rezone the corner of Russell and 39th. That was going to be a mixed use. And if you're not familiar with mixed use, think about the building that's on the corner of Orange and Broadway, where you've got the stores on the bottom and you've got housing above. That's the kind of mixed use that they want. They want the retail on the bottom with no setbacks from the sidewalks, so you're right up on the sidewalk. And then for some reason they think people want to live above their stores. That one, the housing in that, I know one of the condos, a realtor told me that one of the condos above just sold. That building's been there for 7 years. So those condos have sat empty for 7 years. One of them is still for sale. The one that they built on the corner of, well, it's on 3rd and it's right by Nutritional Labs. That one they finally just turned into apartments and they're renting them out. They could never sell those condos. So mixed use isn't marketable in this town, nor are there condos because you can't get loans for them. The bankers are all telling us that if you want to buy a condo in this town, which they're professing to be affordable housing, you have to pay cash. You can't get a loan from a bank for a condo. It also, smart growth, perverts the housing market with grand designs that limit choice of housing types. Drive out by the interstate and look at Pottersville. All of those houses look exactly the same. That's what they're talking about. It doesn't address supply and demand. The cluster developments, the premise that growth should be controlled by concentrating it. If you look in Title 20, there are places that talk about cluster developments where you crowd all the houses together and then you have this fabulous open space surrounding it. We have found that those are also inhibiting affordable housing because the city, when you create that open space, are requiring homeowners associations to maintain it. So those homeowners dues, according to the bankers that I've talked to, have put the housing prices out of reach for a lot of people because those fees are so high and they're uncontrollable. So people can't afford to do that. Smart growth also encourages mass transit use, reduces automobile dependence, cuts air pollution. Well, my day job is running the I-Ride van pool. We have done many studies on mass transit use. And the thing I find most interesting in Missoula, because it's the same pretty much across the US, except the percentages vary a little, 75% of the people in Missoula say they support mass transit for you.
Yeah, right.
Don't ask me to ride the bus. I don't care what you do to that bus. I am never getting on it. It's for you. Rutgers also did a study on that and found that people, when they're riding the bus, if they see that the traffic is light that day, they drive the next day. So, and when you look at Missoula, Mountain Line has been here since 1975, I believe. They build it and they will come. Well, need I say more? The other thing that is disheartening to me is with our infrastructure failing the way that it is, last year, what they call the Transportation Policy Coordinating Committee, which is stacked with progressives. We've got one reasonable person on there. We diverted $2.37 million from our road money to buy a brand new fleet of buses. Well, and the kicker on that one is those buses, the useful life on them, according to the Federal Transit Administration, is in 10 years. So 10 years from now, we are going to have to replace an entire fleet of buses. The other thing that we're doing that is backwards in my mind is we went out, we bought all these buses, and now we're doing a study to see if we've got the right kind of buses, the right routes running. So I think we should have probably reversed that, but as we always do when somebody comes in and says, well, if you don't buy it right now, the price is going to go up. We always buy it, thinking that we're saving money. Title 20 is our zoning policy. It replaced what they called Title 19. The way that they went into this is they told the community that we were cleaning up the language, that over time there had been rulings made, it was confusing, nobody understood it, we needed to clean up the language so the developers and the people working in the Office of Planning and Grants, and I'm probably going to call that OPG, so that's what that acronym means. I'll try not do that, but I do slip. That was not a cleanup of the language, and Dick and Renee and I sued the city over it because they rezoned the city and they did not properly notify you as a citizen that they were rezoning your city. What that Title 20 did is it increased the heights in every zone, it reduced the setbacks, it reduced the parking requirements, and what was it, 2 weeks ago? These guys are just, they voted that if you build an apartment complex with 8 units and you put in 8 long-term bike lockers, you don't have to provide any parking for cars. We tried to get a 25% cap on that and they said no. They should be able to replace all the car parking. Well, I don't know about you, but I have not seen anybody come in here with their suitcase and their furniture on a bike. They're coming in cars and trucks, and we're giving them nowhere to park these vehicles. So anyway, the other side has argued that we lost the lawsuit. We did not lose the lawsuit. What we did is we pulled the trigger too soon. The judge ruled that at any time in the process, because City Council had not ratified Title 20 yet, the city could do the right thing and notify all the citizens. And if they didn't do it, then the citizens were free to sue the city on their own as individuals when that, the ramifications, property value, yeah.
You're an individual now.
Yeah.
They did you a favor.
Well, as I told Bob Jaffe one evening when I was talking to him about getting the financial data out of the city, I said, I know you guys are going to work really hard to get me off city council, but you're going to file that under watch what you asked for. Because right now I have about 20 minutes to spend digging into this stuff that you guys are doing. I'm off city council, you just freed up 20 hours for me. Guess what I'm going to use it for? Well, and I'm hoping that you guys, when we need to hold them accountable, which is what my goal is, that I can count on you to help me, because I can't do it alone. That's the way they pick us off. You get one person standing up there and there's no one behind them, and they just pick us off. So, but I'm willing to learn or use what I've learned on council and what I knew before that, and we are going to hold them accountable. Okay, test redrawn. Oh, okay, coming up, if you want to start getting involved in this, last night we voted to put non-conforming use and structures and exceptions to side setbacks to the planning board. This is where they're going to start cramming in more density. This is where the planning board is going to start moving these accessory dwelling units in. So you guys need to get involved and tell them that no, we don't want these changes, because what they're doing, let me just finish this. What they're doing is they're still doing the language cleanups to rezone this city. So you need to keep that in mind, because this is going to affect your property values. Yeah.
I don't understand this ADU thing. Are they going to start making people put these things in their yards?
They're not going to make them. They're going to allow them. So when they're by right, that means that if I want to put an 800 square foot house in my backyard, I don't have to tell any of my neighbors. I can just do it. And what that's going to result in is, because you're going to have the access and some parking unless you build a bike rack, that's going to result in the total paving over of this city. We aren't going to have backyards anymore. And they view this as a way to create affordable housing. But if you look at what the market's done so far, if you drive down South Avenue, there's a lot there that used to have a single family home. In my time, we used to call those fixer-uppers. I bet that house probably would have sold for maybe $125,000. They scraped that, and there's now 4 houses on that lot. Each one of those houses have been on the market for $235,000. On Grant and McDonald, there was a single family home there. I would suspect that one probably would have sold for $150,000. They scraped that house and they put 3 houses on those. Those houses have all been listed for between $200,000 and $210,000 a piece. If you go down Paxson, there was a single family house, and I'm sure you guys all remember it. It was the one that set back. They had the Patty Creek running through the yard with the bridge over. He had that great green yard and stuff that he kept up. They scraped that. They covered the creek, and there's now 6 condos sitting on that lot. And I don't know if you remember, but the snout houses that Stacy views are dangerous for trick-or-treaters. And those are houses where the garage sits in front of the front door. They don't like those. Those are basically your ranch-style houses. In Title 20, before we put in an amendment, there was a moratorium on those. Those were non-conforming houses, which immediately drops all of your property values. Fortunately for us, Jim Nugent lives in a snout house. A matter of fact, he said his house would probably be termed an elephant house because the garage sticks out so far. So on that one, Jim actually jumped in and helped us because he didn't want to see his property value drop. So, you know, this is having far-reaching effects. And this is another one of their mantras. Zoning regulations must be made with reason, or actually, that's the Lowe's test. And what the Lowe's test is, Missoula lost a lawsuit. And it looks like my notes got clipped, and I apologize for that. But the Lowe's test requires anytime a rezone or some new development is going in, that they assess whether it provides adequate air and light, whether there's transportation infrastructure there, whether, and the two things that they took out was that it doesn't overpopulate the land, and there's something else to do with population, and I do apologize that my printer didn't print that out. But they gutted the Lowe's test, and that was one of the neighborhood protections that we had. They gutted that at the legislature. So now overpopulation in the city is no longer a problem for them. They don't have to consider that in a rezone. The other Agenda 21 things that they have pushed through, oh yeah, back to the Title 20, one last point. When we were doing Title 20, I had several land use attorneys tell me that state statute requires your zoning to substantially comply with your growth policy. Ours is substantially out of compliance with it. Roger Millar, when I asked him, he said, yes, you're going to have to go in and change your growth policy. Well, again, the process is reversed. State statute requires you to change your growth policy before you change your zoning. So right now, our zoning that's in place, that these guys are building all this stuff with, is out of compliance with our growth policy. So, you know, we need to jump on that and see if we can't get the zoning back in line with our growth policy, rather than have them change the growth policy to match this densification of our city. The other thing that they have pushed through that's on the Agenda 21 is our active transportation plan. And what they did with that one to create the data to support their foregone conclusion is when they did these bike counts. If you go back and look, they did them during Bike for Shelter Week, the farmers market. They were very well advertised, so everyone in the bike ped community knew they were coming. They also did not, so if John was on his bike, he would know all the checkpoints and he would ride past the checkpoints, so he would be counted at every checkpoint. He was not counted as one bicyclist. He was counted as a separate bicyclist at each one of those checkpoints. And the way that they're getting you to buy into this is to being such a wonderful thing is what they're calling their Sunday streets, where they close down Higgins Avenue and make it a bike ped environment. And they're out there now saying that every business downtown loves these things. Their business has gone up 40% when we have only bicycles and pedestrians down there. I've talked to some downtown business people and they're saying, hooey. The people that are riding their bikes down there are not, they're down there, but they're not spending any money. And as Hendrickson said one time, no lady in her $400 Prada is going to ride her bike down there to buy a $200 blouse. So, and Coco's is out of business now, by the way. The other thing that they have instituted that is right in line with Agenda 21 is the street narrowing projects that they're doing. Again, it's to force you onto mass transit. Matter of fact, I had a conversation with Jeff Badnock when he was head of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, and he had the big map of Malfunction Junction up. And I was looking at that and I said, this isn't going to work. And he said, oh, it's going to work perfectly, Lynn. I said, no, it's not. You know, it's going to work through here, but you're going to have traffic jams at these 10 other intersections. And he said, exactly, it's going to work perfectly. The harder it is for you to get around in your car, the more likely it is you're going to abandon the car and ride the bus, bike, or walk. So, you know, we've got the Broadway Diet is a road narrowing project, and watch out, because they have wanted to extend that all the way down to Madison. This North Higgins streetscape, I just heard probably 3 weeks ago, they want to extend that all the way down to Brooks. The Brooks Street section that they did where they took out the parking, all of those houses along that corridor are now rentals. So, oh, and Jason's favorite little thing for his friend, his wind energy, where you can have windmills in your backyard. And those things are great. The one guy that got it said it was going to cost him $4,500. The part that they didn't disclose to the public is he already had spent $65,000 putting in the conduit and everything he needed to make it work. So these are not cheap projects. Just kind of a side note, I was reading an article a couple months ago where the oil company over in North Dakota was fined several $100,000 because they'd killed 28 geese in one of their holding ponds. Their attorney went to court and argued that they were violating the 14th Amendment, equal protection, because these wind turbines are killing 400,000 birds a year, and they're not being fined. So our green energy projects, with the government grants that we're getting, we just spent $584,000 of your hard-earned money to put wells in the middle of parks, rendering them useless. We talked about the Prius. We also, with your sewer money, after we told you we had to raise your sewer fees for the next 4 years to pay for the bond we passed to fix our headworks that supposedly we fixed 8 years ago but didn't, they set up a loan fund with that money so that if you open a restaurant, they'll give you a loan to put in your grease interceptor. We also changed out our light bulbs and our heating units, and I can't remember what else. And all of these green projects, you'll recognize them because the money to pay for them comes from the electricity saved. And those numbers appear to be that they use no electricity when these projects are in place. The other thing that you guys really need to be cognizant of, it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with Agenda 21, but while I'm up here, I'm going to take a minute. The special districts. You really need to watch those, and the reason I say that is in 2014, we're going to get our property reappraisals from the state. Everybody has agreed that those are going to drop dramatically. That's where the city gets the bulk of their money from. With these special districts, they can set them at any level they want. And you cannot protest them. You cannot even take them off on your taxes because they're fees. So they told you that they were only $13 a year and it's going to save our roads and parks, but they actually just use it to balance the budget, which is also illegal. And they excluded all the government property, which is also illegal, but we'll look past that. So basically they could put each of those up to $200 a year. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Nothing.
Is that county also?
The county has not enacted them, but I would suspect, knowing the counties keeping up with the Joneses policy, you'll be seeing them. So, yes, Mr. Hendrickson, ex-council person with me.
The county, at this last legislative session, the lobbies fought us tooth and nail on the special districts. And we thought we had something passed, but he was able to coerce legislators, certain legislators, and they prevailed. The county did not want to see us, special district go down to the feet.
Well, and
Yes, I think it will be.
but what you need to understand, the legislation that we wrote and tried to pass was trying to set it up as the voters wanted if you want these special districts, you have to get us to approve of them, not disapprove of them. So what we did in the language is we flipped the protest, where right now you have to get 51% of the value, which we can never get that out of them, the value of the property in that district to protest it. So we switched it to where the city government had to get a 51% approval from the property value in that district. And every county commissioner that was in that hearing, MACO, and the leagues of cities and towns all stood up and said, that is an impossible measure to meet. If you ask us to meet that, we will never get a special district passed. But they don't have a problem with giving you that requirement. And basically the legislation was not to do away with the special districts because we saw value in them. Russell Street is a good example. Almost everybody in this town uses Russell Street. I wouldn't mind throwing in $5 a year to get that thing fixed. It's embarrassing that we've got a major road in this city that's got cattle trails going down it. And it's just totally dysfunctional. And that's the other thing that I'll touch on for a minute. And I know I'm probably putting you to sleep, so.
No, we're interested.
One of the things that with the special districts, yeah, that went down. But just to let you know, I've got all the language that we thought we had passed, and it'll be going back next session. So we're not giving up on this stuff. What they want to do, the special interest group in town that somehow has got a huge voice, and the thing that you've got to really start watching is these special interest groups. The one I like to talk about is MAST, Missoula Advocates for Sustainable Transportation. They were the ones that stopped the 5th, 6th Arthur project where we had a whole bunch of federal money to pay for that road. They stopped it because they didn't like it because it widened the road in certain parts. Well, when Dwayne Cayley, who was the district administrator at that point for the Department of Transportation, one of the people that runs MAST was up questioning him, and Dwayne finally said, I'm not going to answer, how many people are in MAST? How many people do you represent? Well, the gentleman, Alex Taft, who's one of your new city council people, by the way, representing Ward 3, kept pressing Dwayne. He said, I'm not going to answer your question until you tell me how many people you're representing. Well, this back and forth went on for about 5 minutes, and finally Alex admitted it was 6 people. These same 6 people are the 6 people that are in MIST, Missoula Institute for Sustainable Transportation. So as we like to say, these special interest groups are very incestuous. So, when they come out and they say that they're representing large groups, don't buy it. They're not. They're representing a handful of people. But what they want done on 3rd Street is they want a 3-lane with wide bike lanes, big sidewalks. One of them even came and said that they want an overpass that goes over the road with a park on top and a fountain. They're not happy with, which I think is a great idea. We've done, I call them subgrade underpasses for the bicyclists and the pedestrians at 4 different locations along Russell. So they don't have, the cars don't have to deal with them, and they don't have to deal with the cars. And their big objection to those is they're going to be dark. If only we had electricity in this town. Yeah, Bundy.
When you say MIST or MAST or whomever stops something going forward, what's the process that they implement to do that?
They get the students at the University of Montana to protest it. A matter of fact, they have been instrumental installing Russell Street. They were the ones that got the city council to vote for the peer review of the peer review of the peer review. And when I talk about that, the city had hired an engineering firm to do Russell. They weren't up to the work, so they fired him. So they hired another consulting firm to finish the work. And part of the requirement of that new firm was to go back and make sure that their calculations and their modeling was done properly. So that was a review of that work. Well, then MDT The Department of Transportation, Federal Highways also do reviews of these constantly. So that was your second review. Well, City Council, because they didn't like the preferred alternative, the answer they were getting as to what needed to be done on that road, which is a 5-lane, they called for another peer review so they could get a different answer. That last peer review cost all of you an additional $284,000 because there were things that now had changed in the regulations that we wouldn't have had to do, but now we have to do. Yeah,
Five lane, what do you?
a 5-lane
2 car lanes?
and a turn lane. No, 2 lanes and a turn lane.
Why is that 5?
Well, you've got your 2 car lanes and then you've got a left-hand turn lane. So that's considered a 5-lane. And then we've got, like I said, we've got all those subgrade underpasses for the bicyclists and the pedestrians. One's at Wyoming, one's at the bridge. I think one's up by Mount, and I can't remember where the other one is.
I have a following question on that. I haven't saw what's proposed for Russell, but the bridge is 2 lane. Is it proposed to put 4 lane through?
Yes, yes, it is. And when you think of the 5-lane, think of Orange Street. That's what it's going to look like. It is not going to look like Reserve Street. It will look like Stevens and Orange. Yeah.
So what I want to understand about these groups is, so it's 6 people that are very well organized, it sounds like, and they are able to get protests going, and then what, they take the protesters or the information they gather to the city council and communicate that they have this, enough people to stop something, or they want, how does what they do connect with getting the city council to vote their way?
The connection there is the mayor.
Okay. So he supports this and is part of these groups, helping to organize these groups?
I don't know that I would say that he's part of these groups, but he's very supportive of these groups and their Agenda 21.
And then, are there any other groups like this in the city that are as organized and as effective?
There's MIST, there's MAST, as the lady at MDT once said, moist and damp. There's BWAM, which is, you've got the Bike Ped Alliance. CFAC, yes, our new farming coalition, who, by the way, and I might, I was just hearing today that Ken Allen wants to do a gravel pit, and CFAC is going to step in and stop that. George Lake wanted to develop some property out on 3rd Street. No, it was 7th. 7th. And CFAC came in and basically forced him to give them 3 acres of his ground because they deemed it to be prime agricultural land. It's pasture land. It hasn't had any ag on it for years. So CFAC is also coming in, and that's Agenda 21, setting aside huge tracts of farmland and expecting the developers or the landowners to give it to them because it's for the public good.
So are there no groups that are basically conservative or interested in putting forth more conservative ideologies?
I think that would be me, Dick, John, and we haven't come up with a good name yet.
Okay.
The problem is, the groups that are successful are the groups that want what the city council wants. So that goes through. You can have a nice big organization that's conservative, but if that's not what they want to do, you run into all the regulations and whatever, or they legislate against you. So it's not a numbers thing, it's an agreement thing.
Well, it's bigger than that. I mean, it's got the UN, the whole Agenda 21 thing above.
Don't forget your lines.
Yeah.
Where do these people get the money that start these little groups like MAST and MIST?
MAST is made up of Alex Taft, Nancy Wilson, Ray Ayton, Jordan Hess, and I
they
think-
have money, is that it?
Well, Alex Tapp came from Washington DC. He used to be the executive director of what they call AMPO. It's the American Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, really big into Agenda 21. So he, basically was able to sell his house in Washington DC, as we've seen, and he's basically living off of that money. Nancy Wilson runs the Associated Students Transportation Program at the University of Montana. Ray Ayton came from Connecticut, so he's retired and self-sustaining, let's say. Bob Giordano, he doesn't really work, he runs free cycles, so we're thinking that he's got some family money that he lives on. So,
But Alex Taft has an apartment here, so he does not own the Missoula property, correct?
not anymore, no.
So
No.
when you
He used to have a really nice neighbor, but he gave her up. Yeah,
I don't live in Missoula City, but
next? No.
I spend a lot of money in this area, because that's just where we shop. But as the years go by and do less business, I'll never go downtown ever again.
I'm looking forward to that.
And but what's getting me, not only about the elections, but just about the agenda in general, is that the businesses of Missoula are not, they're not standing up against it. So it's just pushing forward. And if the business isn't going to stand up against it, I'm not going to do business with it. Just
Well-
like with an election, if they're too chicken shit to put a sign up in their business window in support of a candidate, I'm not going to go in that business.
Well, and I will tell you, when I was out doing the petitions trying to stop the special districts, we went to the business community. And what we heard time and time again was, boy, I really hope you're successful with this. We really don't want this. And I'd say, well, can I get you to sign the petition? No. I've either got business or I anticipate having business with the city, so no, I can't jeopardize that. And I left them with this thought. Jefferson, when the people are afraid of the government, you have tyranny. When the government's afraid of the people, you have liberty. You choose. So, even though, in my mind, even though John is a very nice man, he's a tyrant.
What about the Chamber of Commerce's role now? Is that going to get better now?
No, they're irrelevant to the conversation, and this election did it. They have got nobody on the city council that's going to vote in favor of anything they want. They're, like I said, they are irrelevant to the conversation. They have been incorporating a policy of appeasement now for 20 years, and the mayor has pulled the city's membership in the chamber. He is refusing to do their State of Missoula address any longer. He has severed all ties with them, and he's going with the Missoula Economic Partnership. And it's my suspicion that the Missoula Economic Partnership, because they are, as with all government things, they never go away. They've got to come up with some source of money to sustain themselves. I believe they're going to go after the chamber membership as a way to do that. And I would suspect in 5 years, we won't have a Chamber of Commerce. We'll only have the MEP, as they call it, the Missoula Economic Partnership.
Well, good. They haven't done anything to help.
Well.
So that'll hold up. What about, is the city incorporated?
Yes.
So therefore, what was the big to-do about that referendum fighting corporations as persons when the city itself is a corporation?
Well, I think profit organizations that fund them are corporations. It applies to them because it doesn't distinguish a for-profit from a nonprofit corporation. And this personhood is never mentioned in the Citizens United, which is what they're trying to talk about. That was a totally different case. And the argument that I make, my husband and I own a corporation, and it's an S-corp. Well, why can my husband and I have our free speech restricted with the profits from our corporation just because you don't like it?
Exactly.
You know, and which is more egregious, a corporation that uses their profits for free speech, or the union that basically strong arms the dues out of you and spends it for things that you may or may not agree with. So even though I voted to support letting the people have their say in it, I personally do not support that resolution. And I agree with Paul Bohan when he said the resolution is flawed because you're not stating the purpose of the resolution, which is to turn out voters. You're not trying to change the Constitution with this. You're trying to turn out voters, and it should state that. And that was the purpose of that.
Biggest special interest is government.
Yeah. Well, and if
They
you,
advertise all the time. You get free time on the radio and TV.
yeah, so you'll take advantage of their programs so they can control your life. And at many chamber meetings, which just really dumbfounded me, Jason would stand up and tell those business owners, well, there aren't many business owners on the chamber, and I think that's one of the problems, but he would lecture them on that a government job is just as good as a private sector job. So does anybody else have any other questions? Yeah.
Earlier in your presentation, you talked about these buildings that they were building. Who was building it? The city? The county?
Well, basically what they do, because of the permitting, the zoning restrictions and stuff, they make it easier for the developer to build the kind of buildings that the city wants built rather than what the developer wants built. As a matter of fact, one developer in town said, you know, I don't want to build the kind of stuff they want me to build because I don't want to have to drive my kids, my grandkids past that and say, oh, grandma built that. She said, I want to drive them past stuff that I'm proud of and looks good when they're adults.
Won't they stop building, I mean, if they build condos and you can't get a loan for a condo, or you can't sell a condo above a retail business, don't those people learn their lesson that it doesn't matter if they get a break, why would you build something you can't sell? I mean, it's, at some point, don't people just say, I'm not doing it?
You would think, but there's still, like I said, we've got all those mixed-use buildings in town, and they were still trying to rezone the corner of South and 39th 2 weeks ago to do exactly that kind of development.
Yeah, but who would be dumb enough to develop it?
That's the whole idea.
Yeah, well, and that Randall O'Toole, one of the things that is really stuck in my mind, he had these slides up there. And he had a slide, and it was a gray mixed-use building. And he was talking about one of the most interesting thing in the textbooks that they use to train these urban planners is on the second page of the book, where it says it was printed in the Soviet Union in the 1920s. So I had this slide up there with this mixed-use building, and he started talking about the development in Portland, Oregon, which, by the way, your city council loves. And he kind of glanced over his shoulder. He said, oh, I'm sorry, no, this is the building in Portland. Well, it was the same building. The only difference between the two buildings is the one was gray, the other one was painted yellow. The gray one was in the Soviet Union. The yellow one was in Portland.
I noticed when we were out on the campaign trail from time to time, and I was into some new neighborhoods that I hadn't been in, the quality of the material that went into these homes. I don't think you have to be an expert to figure out that maybe 20 years down the road, I mean, it's going to be equivalent to somewhat of a trailer park.
Yeah, no, the development that they like has a 30-year shelf life, so to
Do
speak.
they not factor that in? I mean, do they not take any pride? It's just temporary?
Well, no, it's the only way that they can basically make houses that people can afford. The other part of this Agenda 21 that they're doing is our open space, which, by the way, we all voted for those bonds thinking, wow, what a great thing. We're surrounded by national forests. Hello. But if you notice, with that open space money, they are buying up all of the developable land around the city of Missoula.
And into the county.
Yeah. So what they're doing is they're buying up all the developable land, taking it out of the market, but they're not doing anything to the demand. And that's exactly what happens with smart growth. They don't do anything to address the land that they're taking out. And Economics 101, supply and demand. So that's why our housing prices are skyrocketing. As a matter of fact, Randall O'Toole talked about a house that was in Portland where they do smart growth. In Texas, they allow cities to have smart growth policies, but the counties can't zone. And that's the way that they've stopped the smart growth. So this same house in Portland, Oregon was selling for $350,000. The house down in, I can't remember what part of Texas it was selling for $160,000. Housing prices in Texas is basically flat. I mean, it's going up a little bit, but it's flat, where once smart growth, it just does your old hockey stick on you. So they talk about affordable housing, but smart growth is counter to that. You never get affordable housing when you've instituted smart growth policies.
Can you talk about the city budget?
Yeah.
So where's the city going? When's it gonna run out of money?
It's not going to run out of money until we run out of money. And we're, yeah, and we're, actually John and I were talking about this the other day. We're both figuring that they're going to probably ask for 6 to 8% this coming year, this coming budget, because of all the union contracts he's negotiated. And don't forget about the 2 retirement plans you're paying for an elite group of city managers that they created when they were telling you they were freezing their salaries, and they didn't.
So tell us about that.
Okay. Yeah. I think this is on to Agenda 23, but back in 2010, when they froze all the city salaries, Bruce Bender, Brent Ramharder, Gail Verlanick, Jim Nugent, and Steve King all told the public, that they were going to take a salary freeze because it was just not fair for them to get salary increases when the line staff and the union workers weren't. Okay? Well, backdoor, they created what they call 401A municipal deferred compensation plans for themselves. And the kicker on this one is the percentage of their salary that is put into these deferred compensations. And remember, you're still paying for 401Ks for them too. So the amount that's put into the 401As is dependent on the firefighter contracts. Who negotiates the firefighter contracts? Bruce Bender, Jim Nugent, Brent Ramharder, and Gail Verlanick. So ask yourself, why is it that the firefighters got a 4% increase this year, your police officers got 2.5%, and your other union workers got 2.5% or 1%? It's because it's in the people negotiating the contracts' interest, personal interest, which Jim has said is any financial benefit is a conflict of interest. You've got 4 people negotiating those contracts that are benefiting from them financially. So, yeah.
Can't they be sued for that then?
Well, I'm continuing to do research and get the documentation I need to do. But I think what would be more effective is for a whole room full of citizens to just crowd City Hall and during budget season and say, no, no. But, yeah.
You haven't mentioned the word Italy.
Oh.
I know that's part of Agenda 20.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And there are, from what I understand, about 11 cities that have gotten out of that membership, which makes me think that we could too. Has there been any research done to find out how they did it? And I have some petitions to the mayor and the city council that Luis had on his table that we could, pass out if you think that that will do good.
What a wonderful planted question. A matter of fact, not this Monday, but the Monday before when I was going through our accounts payable, guess what I found in there? Our ICLEI membership, $1,200 a year. $600 of it comes out of the mayor's salary. $600 comes out of the city council salary. I forwarded Gloria all the information I'm getting on that. I've got the resolution that city council passed joining it. So we are talking about that on November 30th. That's your opportunity to come down, and because I pulled it off and said, don't pay this. There's people in this community that do not want us to belong to this. And I can tell you the other side's going to have their greenhouse gas people and what a benefit it is to Missoula. So you guys, this is your first test.
Can you tell us November 30th?
ICLEI is the International
Council
Legislative.
Legislative Executive.
Ben Schmidt. Ben Schmidt is the health department guy that approved the permit for the biomass burner at the University of Montana. So, yeah, they are very active in it. I have not found who authorized. I asked Ellen Leahy because the track that I was getting, and I presumed that it was Ben Schmidt, that because of the information I was getting out of ICLEI, that it was in our health department that was a member too. But the other thing that I found today, because our mayor said that he is part of this and he goes to the conferences, this is basically the Agenda 21 conference for our city mayors that have signed on to that. I haven't been able to read all through this, but you can see ICLEI is right on here.
And is that the website, usmayors.com or .org?
I just Googled mayor's climate change and was able to find it off of there.
So in addition to the mayor paying $600 out of his budget and the city council, you're saying the health department also pays for ICLEI?
That I haven't been able to find yet.
And then the county is supposed to be a member?
Well, according to what I got off of online was depending on how many people in the community and the county, and when it got over 50,000, it was $1,200 a year, and if it was under 50,000, it was $600 a year. So when you add the county and the city, $1,200 a year.
Well, but no, because what I found with our accounts payable is the mayor's office is paying $600,
Right.
and the city council is paying the other $600. So I haven't been able to figure out if the county has their own membership or not.
Well, according to this gentleman, both were right.
Yeah. Hi, Nikki.
Now, in exchange for being a member of ICLEI, do they get grants? And how much money does it get from the United Nations to do this plan? Trails?
And, I haven't been able to come up with that dollar amount yet. But certainly your CDBG, your community development block grants coming out of the federal government are part of this.
And how about
And your
rural
green
initiatives?
blocks are part of this.
Rural initiatives, that's pretty much equal to OPG, right? They plan together and plot together.
Mhm.
And I think rural initiatives is directly from the agenda.
Yep, it is. And oh, by the way, your other new city council person is the brother of the guy that runs our rural initiatives program.
You've heard of the right?
All that communist that was up there.
Yeah.
No, it's his brother that is taking Renee Mitchell's place. Welcome to our nightmare. Michael Herron. Mhm. Yeah.
Curious, I've studied Agenda 21 for 3 years now, and I really appreciate getting an inside view from your perspective. It may be a rhetorical question, but I'm curious if your opinion on the people who are for this, are they just caught up in a doublespeak? Are they aware that it's a UN agenda, or are they not and just, think it's a great idea? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that they have bought into what I call the global, or let's call it climate change now, religion. It is a religion, no matter what facts you put in front of them saying that there is no global or climate change. They still have bought it hook, line, and sinker. They see this as a way to save the planet. But in my view, the very people that profess to love Missoula are hell-bent on destroying Missoula. And all you have to do is look at that Agenda 21 map. My opinion is a lot of our council people look no further than this. They do not have the capability to ascertain unintended consequences or deal with them once they've arrived.
So this is the second Hickley city that I've actually lived in.
Oh, lucky you.
Formerly Portland, which is
Oh, yes.
much further down the
We should have run you.
Yes. I tell you to check it out in Northwest Portland, but there's nowhere to park for 16 city blocks.
Yeah.
To answer the gentleman's question earlier, how they do this and how they actually, get people to adopt the more central planning and that kind of thing, is basically they don't fix your roads. They don't, they block your ability to get places, and it makes the living in one central place, one of these, organized clusters, if you will,
Yeah.
much more appealing because you can't get it anywhere. So, and I've noticed that starting to happen here in Missoula more and more. So,
Yeah, plus it allows them to divert your, yeah, but they divert your infrastructure money, which we have done over and over and over again. They divert it to social programs.
And we're seeing the results of the liberal agenda on educating the kids all the way through higher education, and they come out and they believe in all this stuff because that's what they've been told.
Yeah, a matter of fact, last night, I don't know how many of you watched MCAT, and then I'll stop because it is getting late. We had a whole room full of probably college students, I would deem, down there basically asking us to run MRL out of town because they don't like the noise from the coupling of the rail cars, they don't like the diesel, and they don't like the coal dust.
That'd be great, maybe they'll all start with it.
Well, and I've worked with Denny Washington several years ago, and I believe if he takes MRL out of here, he's going to take Envirocon, he'll take Washington Corporations, he will take it all. And these are the corporate headquarters. They do a lot of work here across the state. So they will finally kill the last good paying jobs that we have in this town that you don't have to have a college education to get.
Well, then all they'll have to do is tear out a couple bridges on the interstate and hand everybody a hoe and say, here you go, have at it.
Well, actually what they have planned for the rail bed, you'll find that in the downtown master plan. And, this to me is counterintuitive as well. And I'm not saying that low-income people shouldn't be able to live on the river, but most cities use their riverfront property to build their high-end housing, and the low-end housing is on the railroad tracks. Well, if you look in the downtown master plan, the low-income housing is all along the river, and our multi-million-dollar condos are on the rail tracks.
Well, that's all well and good, but you know what? There's no business here. There's no business, there's no industry, and the mayor has a pipe dream of getting genetic research and pharmaceutical research here. He's full of crap. They're all full of crap. There's not going to be any work here.
Well, and even if they do accomplish that goal, do a
They're
little...
not going to accomplish it.
Well,
because they
no.
don't have the university structure to support that sort of research.
Well-
The only research in pharmaceuticals and genetic research is in San Francisco or Boston, and when you look at those two cities, this state can't compare with that research. They can't do it.
Well, let's be delusional for a minute, just for fun. Let's say...
Now you're being like the rest of them.
Well, no, but let's say they...
I thought you freed yourself from that sucker.
Well, no, because I like to go down these roads every once in a while because it's so humorous. Let's say they do accomplish that dream. They don't want coal dust, but they are perfectly happy with the more hazardous waste that research is going to leave them with, and they have no way to get rid of it.
Well,
But if you look at the Gardner plan that they did, which is what created the Missoula Economic Partnership, when you look at the businesses that they are targeting to bring to town, we already have all of those businesses here. So that tells you that they either don't want any new business to this town, which I believe all of this is about restricting growth. This is a group that has the old adage that some of us that have been around long enough, once I get here, you close the gate, you can't change anything and nobody else can come. I think that's their mindset. They want to keep Missoula exactly as it is. Or, and I told this when I was campaigning to the business groups I talked to, they don't want to diversify our tax base. They want to bring in competition for you. Wouldn't the wise thing be to go to you and get you to expand if we actually do need more of your business and get some other type business here? So when your business takes a hit, we've got this other thing to stabilize our economy. No, these, whatever. I will stop now.